has got a lot to share.
Hey, welcome to another edition of Radio Friends again. This being for the what have we got? The 6th of October, 2023.
Yes.
I am on the road and Jim Harrington is riding shotgun with me. And so I'm dealing with some stuff out here with family. And if I have to jump off, we wanted to make sure that Jim could hold on to the rest of you because these darn things just keep getting better and better. So before we did record today, we were talking to Tracy Carmen a bit about some jingles that comes up quite often. And Tracy, I just wanted to start out by saying that the fact that you archive stuff that no one would ever, other than you, would have the chance to listen to all of it. I can say to you, as someone who has quite a few, and they know where they need to go if I should go. Angela, God bless that gal, but it means a lot that you have them, because for people like myself that they are so close to ever imagine, throwing them out or just putting them somewhere where no one would know where they were, that's the worst. So for what it's worth to you, I want to let you know from a family standpoint, it's invaluable what you do. So thank you.
Thank you. It's 50 years of doing it. One of the Bruce Upchurch emailed me last week, who owns Thompson Creative and a bunch of other stuff. And he said, there's no cure for what you've got. He was joking because he was looking for some obscure stuff I was able to come up with. And he said, oh, you're the only person I know that would have it and crazy enough to keep it. So it is what it is.
Tracy, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Was there a jingle package put together for the TV show WKRP in Cincinnati?
Not that I'm aware of. I know they had, the theme that was done was random shouts into the bed at the end of it. They have the theme for, what was the guy's name? Carlisle. They actually released it as a country record. Was it Steve Carlisle?
Sounds familiar. I might be able to give you the answer in a second. So
yeah. There you go. I know they released the theme. I don't think there was ever a jingle package done for the show directly.
Yeah, Steve Carlisle. This was back in 1981. Just simply entitled WKRP in Cincinnati.
MCA label, I think. I could be wrong. You have the book.
Jesus, you want everything here.
Yeah, hey, listen, if you're going to go for broke, go for broke.
Yeah, it was MCA. That is correct.
The comment I was making before we started the recording, though, is, John Wolfert knows all the product that he produced over the years because it's coming up on the 50 years of Jam. But the other companies are second generation people who were not there in the beginning. And for example, Ron Sedale had some cuts redone for Where Your Friends Are. And one of the cuts is Laughing, Dancing, Lighter Than Air. And he gave them the lyrics.
Love that one.
Yeah, and they transformed it. They transposed it to Clapping, Dancing, Lighter Than Air when they sang the thing, which really makes no freaking sense at all. So I took my multi-tracks here, pulled the acapella lift from WFUN in Miami, the backing track, which they mixed it in his case in mono. So I pulled out the 8-track and separated the tracks to make it a stereo track, took his acapella and remixed the whole thing. So it sounds better coming from me than it did from the company.
Well, a lot of that stuff, Tracy, with the original, with the Friends package, all the Friends package, and jingles before the Friends package. My dad used to come home with those samples from TM or whatever, and he would go into the bedroom with the Wallensack tape recorder, and he would sit there, and he would write up lyrics and everything to go with DRC. And I remember one of them was a jock shout, and it was tremendous. And I heard that one, and it was called the jock shout was Skip Brouchard, and that turned into Solid Gold. Remember, but that
Skip was one of the people that wrote that package. He was at the station and he was either at Wokey I think he was at Wokey in Milwaukee. So, and you're right. That's the one that became the Solid Gold Remember, because his name, that cut with his name, Skip Brouchard, is still sitting on the multi-track, which is here, to me, the funny thing is doing exploration. For example, TM's going to reopen their iJingles program today, which means if anyone wants to buy personal cuts, they can for a relatively reasonable cost. And I had dinner with Ron Sedale on Monday or Tuesday, and I guess it was Monday. And he was looking for these jingles that he heard on an air check, and he hunted down and found out the name of the package. And I looked in my emails, and sure enough, back in March, TM emailed me asking me if I have a copy of the tracks. And I sat there and I looked around and I found different reference tapes for it, but none of the references had the tracks. So I said to Ron after dinner, I said, let's run over to the warehouse and figure this thing out. So we ran over and we're going through the shelves. He said, I think it was 1979. Then we listened to the demo. It's 1985. We went looking through all the 2-inch reels for 1985. Couldn't find it. I said, I have an inventory when TM was sold of what the list of all the multi-tracks are. Let's see if I can find the package. So sure enough, I look on the list. It's listed on the package as reel number 24, track number 155. So I go over to the shelf and look at the reel, and the name of the package isn't on it. All it says is Easy Communications, which was apparently a broadcast company at some point in time. And open the box and look at the sheets, and there's cuts for KHJ. And I said, well, here's the package. So then I came home, and we've transferred. I showed the box a few weeks ago. I'm kicking them under the table here. We transferred everything to CD. Now I'm moving it to hard drives because CDs weren't that big back then. Sure enough, I do a search on my drives for Easy Communications, found the original station, and listen, they're the backing tracks. But I would never know that, and they wouldn't know. No one's around long enough to know that a package called Hot Tracks or whatever it was called is this, because it's listed on the hard drives. The first 3 syndications, or the first, not even syndications, the first masters were the Easy Communications package before they actually named it something. So now, if he wants to have cuts resung, I'm sending the tracks through the Dropbox or to TM so they can resing them for him.
Wow.
Tracy, do you know if you have any tracks of a jingle package came out of Texas for AFRN, Alaskan Forces Radio Network. And the guy, Sergeant Major Al Varnes, thought himself to be a real hot jock and was doing part-time work downtown in Anchorage at the time. And he actually ordered a jingle package and had it customized for AFRN, Alaskan Forces Radio Network. And we used it in late 60s. It was either 67, 68, and probably the whole time I was up there. And it came out of one of the companies in Texas. I thought it was Dallas, and it might have been somewhere else, might have been Houston or someplace, but it was a Texas company. And I had just gotten there, and the package came up, and it was pretty hot, and he was all excited about it because the morning show during that time, the morning shift, was a top 40 show, and I did a top 40 show in the evening at the time. In the interim, there was a lot of block programming of other stuff, country music, big band stuff, and all kinds of things like that, but and a lot of news and information. But that was very unusual. I would like to have seen that as a line item on the budget, jingle package for Armed Forces Radio.
Your tax dollars at work.
Yeah, I know.
At play.
Well, I know there are a bunch of packages done by TM. I know, like American Forces Radio, AFARTS or whatever they called it.
Right.
I have multiple reels, multi-tracks for that. They bought Shockwave, which was a big package in the early 70s. And I've got the multi-track for that sitting on the shelves.
This was in the 60s.
Late 60s, so it's going to be pre-TM, and probably it's either going to be PAMS or Spot.
I thought it was PAMS. Yeah.
It's interesting, Tracy, because the company that I worked for the last 4 or 5 years after CRN pretty much closed, I got a hold of Tommy Russo, L&R Productions, and the first thing I said to him is I want to sell jingles, because I would always find a way, whether it was cable TV or radio or whatever, to bring jingles into the mix. Because to me, there was nothing like singing about a company. And it was funny because talking to Tommy Russo, he had said, and they had some great radio station, TV station, jingle packages in different parts of the country. And I thought that was really great. I think he even did stuff local for like one of Dave's favorite radio stations. Wasn't it WMRD, I think, in Middletown? Middletown with MRD and LIS. But we did a lot of local stuff like that, and a lot of stuff for the middle of nowhere. But it was it was so much fun. We had one client said the name of the company was New England Silica. The guy goes, tough Italian guy, hey, you can never make anything by a New England Silica. You couldn't make a jingle out of that. Tommy looked at him and said, really? American Ladders and Scaffold. And son of a gun. We went back there a couple weeks later singing about New England silica, and the guy's foot was tapping. It's still the magic of Jingles. I always sold through spec spots, and spec spots were awesome because it would, a guy who would never be on the radio would hear that, and then he'd ask who to make the check out to because he loved the song so much. We had one client, Tommy said one of the first times, and God rest Tommy, we lost him last year to a stroke. But we had one client, Northeast Promotions or Northeast Expos, and she said, "Can you cut out some of that copy so I can hear more of my jingle?" And he said that's only happened a handful of times. But I got to tell you, man, that nothing is like it. And it's too bad. It's too bad that all these, all
You
these
guys remember how you felt when you first had someone sing your name?
Oh, well, I got to tell you, I was at Kiss FM doing part-time overnight, the lowest man on the totem pole, and I never got a jock shout. So one time, like 3 o'clock in the morning, I just did a music bed, and I went, Steve Parker. That was the closest I ever got to a jock shout.
Well, yeah, remember, Steve, we had Frank Clifford didn't make shouts, but, did your theme, Steve Parker and Company.
Yeah, to the melody of Cheeseburger in Paradise.
Right,
and
right.
Used to say, "Oh my
I never
God,
got a mention. I guess I was the company.
Well, it's funny when it comes right down to it. I mean, the whole idea of a jingle or any of these things is to be imprinted and be remembered. I look at stuff. I mean, we all remember the Winston commercials. I mean, the one that I hear locally that was sung in Dallas that I hear all the time on the radio to this day. I've been hearing it on the radio since I was in college. Tom Merriman wrote it as the Town Fair tire commercial.
Oh yeah.
Name brands at discount prices. You can't go anywhere without hearing that freaking thing on the radio.
Oh yeah, and I know that L&R got involved with some of that too. I mean, it was just like they I didn't know, like, for instance, we talked about this before, some of the incredible talent that's on jingle packages that you never even hear about. And I know locally here, guys by the name of Billy Holloman, and he's got a basement at his house in Avon with a studio. And I was talking to him about jingles. He goes, "Steve, I play on all those." And and then I found out, I saw him play with the Shabu All-Stars. And also they had the Rolling Stones horn section at that particular event in Willimantic last summer. But Lefty Foster, who was the guy who was one of the guys that started Shabu, he goes, "Billy Holloman, he just got done doing the horns for Bruce Springsteen's new album." It's amazing the talent on these things.
And everybody knows who the talent is. I mean, you look at where your friends are. I mean, you made the comment about England Dan, or I think it was Dan. Yep. Dan was on that. Janie Fricke was on that package.
So Elvis people too, weren't there some from the Elvis?
Ronnie Tutt was playing drums. Ronnie Tutt from Elvis's band. Pam's had Glenn Campbell in doing their country package. He lost a bet to Bill Meeks and came down to Dallas and played on a session. Thompson did an oldies package. They brought in the remains of the Wrecking Crew that were still around to do their package. I mean, the talent pool. I mean, these people just want to play. They don't have egos. They just want to play.
Nope.
And that's what the public doesn't get. When you get these groups together and to do this stuff. For some of them, it's just another gig. For some of them, they just like to play and they like to be heard. The talent on, like Drake jingles in Los Angeles, which everybody knows from the different radio stations. Those are all the Wrecking Crew, led by Hal Blaine. These people, for them, some of them it's just a living. They're singing for their dinner, etc. But it's just a very large, vast talent pool that worked on a lot of these materials that are just unknown to everybody.
I'm not saying that jingles are important to me or not, but
Jim Harrington.
Oh, excuse me.
Hey, wait a minute! That was your family singing that, Jim. That was your family.
Was that a sneeze? God bless you.
Another Hal Blaine. Another Hal Blaine fun fact. Hal Blaine was actually in the Hartford Circus Fire.
Wow. He was from Holyoke. From Holyoke. Harold Belsky.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. He was from here.
He would have been a rich guy if he didn't get divorced so many times along the way. He said that himself.
Those guys made a ton of money.
He
Well,
did.
I mean,
A
Carol
lot
Kane,
of fun being involved in the production. I mean, I must have bought dozens and dozens of packages for consulting clients and for like WWYZ. The last couple of packages, one was a jam, one was TM. I sat in the studio in Hartford listening to and participating by talkback in the actual production, being able to listen in stereo by ISDN. It was so cool.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, when I was about 15 and my dad asked me if I wanted to go to Dallas with him, and I got to sit in on part of the Friends package, that's when I really got the jingle bug. You know, when you see these people just come in with such amazing talent, but like you're saying, really, Pete, to be able to be listening live to their sessions, not too many people get to do that. That must have been wild.
you know, eight counts, and they're you know, there's in the Wrecking Crew movie, they're talking about doing this thing for Disney where they brought them in to do some of their rock and roll music, and you know, they hand them the sheet music and they count the 8 count offs, and they're already playing the stuff. I've got sessions with the Ron Hicklin singers where they're sitting there saying, okay, we should take this up a half a step. So they just start singing a half a step up. They're not even rewriting the music to be in the half step up. They're just doing it off the top of their heads. These people.
Do you think jingles are as important now? I mean, or could they be important again?
I'm sure everybody has their opinion on it, and I certainly have mine. My problem with it these days is, first of all, most of it's trade. So the radio stations aren't going to spend real money on the stuff, which leads them to really, you know, a lot of companies are using real what's it called, Real World up in Washington, and Real World phones the parts in. One of the singers is in Seattle, one singer is in Virginia, one's in Los Angeles. You know, they're phoning the parts in. I don't think they're as important today as they were because all these stations are all under one umbrella. So they don't care if one station's not faring well versus another because they own them all. I hate to say radio is becoming less and less relevant, especially in this crowd. I mean, but radio is a delivery device, and today's teens don't even turn on the radio. They're turning on Spotify or Amazon Music or Pandora. I think they could be more important. I mean, I'm up here in Springfield. We're running an LPFM. I've got TM jingles on there. HYN and MAS are running real world jingles. And if you heard one station versus the other, as far as the jingles, they sound exactly the same. John Wolfordism is more drums and call letters. And that's what these things sound like.
But that's a great station. That station really sounds fantastic. I helped Chris Tracy with the audio processing on it recently. It's just an amazing little radio station.
Thank you. Yeah, we're doing our thing. I talked to Chris this morning. Of course, we work together every day on this stuff. We're doing our thing. We're just sitting now trying to pick jingles to be sung. I'm debating whether we're going to do TM or if we're going to do Thompson this time around.
You get a jingle done for Radio Friends again.
Well, tell me what you want. I'll have it sung. Not a big deal.
Yeah, just I don't know. I'm not a jingle writer.
Well, I was
Steve, go through it.
I was thinking we'll talk off this thing. I was thinking of taking the one that you're using and having them re-sing that. I already have something in the back of my mind.
Something like that. Something short and sweet and to the point, you know. And that's why I picked that.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is radio stations don't care about the stuff. And I hate to say that, especially with having like Pizza Land here and other people that have programmed. You know, the importance of it seems to be lost to these people. You know,
the importance of radio is lost to the people that are running radio stations.
Well, I think we own these stations. Well, we take more pride, you know, in what we're doing with our LPFM than the big guys are doing it there, you know, the iHearts and everybody else are doing. I mean, that's the reality of it. You know, you have Chris Tracy. Yeah, and you have Chris Tracy trying to figure out, he calls me up, I changed the EQ on my microphone. Does it tell me if the break sounds good? You know, they don't care locally. I mean, if you walked into iHeart in Springfield, you might as well be in a ghost town.
Yeah, well, it's my place too. I mean, at Odyssey, I tell people that, you know, the reason that two things. Steve Salhaney sleeps in late on Saturday mornings, thank you, God. And the other part of that is I avoid the suits. I'm 5:30 till 8:30. I mean, my opening act is coast to coast. I'm talking about Sasquatch. So I pretty much Saturday mornings avoid all that stuff. But I have to admit, I think jingles may exist, but maybe not so much to radio stations as they will in the future, to even how some of these people, whether it's Spotify or Pandora or whatever, use them. Because I think the one thing I enjoyed about working with jingles was the fact that I wasn't worried about whether or not they went to a radio station. Because one of the biggest markets that L&R had was minor league baseball, AA baseball, because the baseball team did, These Cats Rock, that line never even existed till they had to write a jingle. And that and the Yard Goats, all these goofy named teams, they love jingles because when they hit the field, they blare them through the stadium. So that's a big thing. But I had a question, and I want to make sure it doesn't get lost here. And I don't mean to kind of jump in the middle of all this, but Pete, explain to me what kind of stuff you were doing for YZ when you were putting those together.
One of the packages was called Uncountry, where it kept all of the twang out of it, and it just sounded like top 40 AC jingles, in order to attract people who were not country partisans to the country station. Had the best ratings we'd had in years when we did that. These were basically in a country format. Didn't want to make them sound like the radio station music did, because then they wouldn't stand out. This way, the jingles stood out, and you understood what station you were listening to, and you'd remember it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, because, if you go back to the Series 27, the Jet Set series that everybody knows that DRC had, those jingles were really big band jazz oriented. The chord changes in those things were phenomenal. That's one of the greatest jingle packages ever. But there again, it didn't sound like the music that was played on the air. And that was always, I don't know, I dealt with that when I was at WMGK here in Philly. We were a soft rock radio station, a la like the original YZ was. And the jingles that I had custom made at Jam were soft jazz, smooth jazz oriented jingles, because I didn't want them to sound like the radio station. It's very, very important.
Bob, some of the best jingles ever made were the ones you made for MGK at that time.
Oh, thank you. That was a custom package. As a matter of fact, I was frantically looking before for a picture that I had taken. We did a custom jingle session at Jam, and just for the hell of it, my wife was with me, and we said, during one of the breaks, we said, let's go into the studio there and have our picture taken as if we were singing on the microphones. I can't find the damn thing. It was someplace here. That was back in the mid 80s. I think we had 3 customs that were made, and they all came out really well. And Jonathan, I don't have to sing his praises because he's just the ultimate pro when it comes to this. Something else that was mentioned before about jingles, I think the worst jingles on the air are those retail jingles you hear with like 7 seconds worth of a tag, and you can't understand what the hell they're singing about, what the name of the product is, or who the client is. They're just slapped together. Probably took them exactly 7 seconds to do and come up with a jingle like that. It's really a disgrace. But again, a lot of those writers that we're talking about for these classic jingles on NEW and from Pam and Jams, those people came out of the big band era. They came out of, the Sinatra period, the 40s, 50s, and they were writing like the bands did back in the 40s and 50s, but it has held the test of time. It's like the Basie band. You could take the Basie band anywhere today, put it on stage, and they sound just as great as they did 60, 70 years ago.
Today you can get a guy, his guitar, and his girlfriend, and they can record a jingle.
Sure.
The technology has changed that point. The Dallas ended up being the jingle capital because it was non-union down there, and they could negotiate doing re-sings over pre-recorded beds. And a lot of the people who did a lot of, like, for example, Jim West, who did a lot of the Pam's packages in the early days, Box, they all came out of the big band era. Tom Merriman could write stuff in his head. He's on an airplane going out to LA to do a package called The Winning Score. He's writing the scores in his head as he's sitting on the airplane for the players to play. These people were very talented. They, unfortunately, most of them have died off. A lot of these people are no longer with us, unfortunately. I feel like I'm, the coffer of the dead people's recording tapes up here.
Tracy, the Quincy Jones package that he did, the CRC,
I've got the multi-track of a few of the cuts here. Absolutely.
It's terrific. I remember at one of the radio conventions, he was a guest, an honor and speaking. And I went up after him. I said, "Hey, Quincy, is it true that you did radio jingles at one point?" And he said, "Sure is." So
how about 187 Cars for Kids?
I turn that off every time.
No, please. No.
I hate that one, man. I hate that one.
You had to mention that.
Ones.
I just had breakfast, please.
I turned my radio dial
jingle.
Right.
You can say that, but at least it's memorable. You may hate it, but you remember it.
It's been on the air for what, 10 years?
Okay, that's
Okay, Steve, that's good.
That's enough.
We got
That's enough.
Yeah, that's enough, Steve.
Keep your day job.
That's
And
called
I think,
an earworm.
Hey, Bob Craig, you must know. I mean, most people do know that Charlie Watts was one of the most greatest jazz drummers, and he was, Mick Jagger loved him because he said he always kept him in the groove.
That's right. And, Watts has a few big band albums out that he did. He's guested with the WDR big band. He's actually had a couple of vocal albums out where he sings things out of the Great American Songbook.
Really?
And as a vocalist, he makes a pretty good drummer. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, he was the straightest one. He would go home to his wife all the time. Didn't care about any of the other scene. But there's a book called Sympathy for the Drummer. And that talked a lot about his jazz history and the fact, even if you watch the Stones, I mean, he's right in it, man. You can just tell he's like a traditional drummer that way.
He's in the pocket.
Yep.
If you can see this, guys, hold on a second here. I'm trying to see if I can see it myself on here.
Harold K.
Oh my God, Wrecking Crew.
Absolutely. And she's still performing and still teaching.
No kidding. She's the goddess, man.
You guys have seen that special, haven't you? The Wrecking Crew?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you something too, Bob. I mean, the reason I knew the thing about Hal Blaine with the circus fire was if you've seen the documentary, that's awesome. If you could pick up the book, there's like another 75% of. I mean, the Wrecking Crew movie is great, but the book is phenomenal.
I read the book. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the stuff you find out about the artists that played in the background. I mean, they played on everything. They did every genre of music. They did everything great.
Yeah.
It was just.
But they take them from when they were kids. I mean, they started talking about, as you know, they started taking them from Glenn Campbell as a kid.
Yeah.
What his life was like before he got to the Wrecking Crew, and then how he went on to Wichita lineman and really having a career out of there. And of course, he
played on Tequila by the Champs.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. And the Beach Boys.
I'd love to see them do something on the Singers that, again, maybe this is my bias or maybe because the Wrecking Crew movie's already been done. You sit there and I take a look at the Singers. I'm friends with Tom Baylor. There's Tom and John Baylor. Tom did the scores and everything for We Are the World for Quincy Jones. John Baylor's the high voice on like the TIC jingles, or like Kawasaki lets the good times roll, or Drive a Datsun Then Decide. And they were the singer equivalents of the Wrecking Crew. And a lot of those guys, unfortunately, are dying off. But the stuff that they sang on, I mean, I'm talking to Gary Puckett a few years ago at the Big E, and there was no such animal as the Union Gap backing, and they used the Ron Hicklin Singers. Same thing with a lot of the groups that are out there. Jackie Ward, I think I've mentioned this on these calls before. She sang all the backgrounds singing for Barbra Streisand. She had one hit as Robin Ward with Beautiful Summer. Sandy Stevens, the Baylor brothers, these are everywhere, including on those WNEW jingles. Some of these people go back that far.
And then there was Trilla Hart.
Right.
Trilla's still around.
Right.
She's go ahead.
There was a
singer. I think I asked you about this before, Tracy, and we tracked it down through Don. Was the NEW jingles, the ones we were talking about before? There was a classic jingle that "You're Never Alone in New York" and singing the blues and blah 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 blah. And the singer on that, he tracked it down for me. Her name was Gloria Wood, and Gloria Wood was probably one of the last singers that you would think of doing something as bluesy, kind of like an Annie Ross of Lambert Hendrickson Ross trio, who I'm sure Ted Dallek, who knows very well that trio. And she was actually a vocalist with the Kay Kaiser Band in the 40s. And she, out of all people, sang the vocal of the Woody Woodpecker song that was a big hit for the Kay Kaiser Band.
I just heard that yesterday. We're driving in the car, and Patty likes to listen to the 40s music thing. On Sirius XM, and that Woody Woodpecker, Kay Kaiser came up, and she looked at me, she said, "What was that?"
Right. And that woman who sang on there, Gloria Wood, and she had an album that I have in my collection that came out on Columbia, and straight ahead standards. Really a good singer, damn good singer.
Well, there was a group called the Swingle Singers that came out. Remember the Swingle Singers?
Ward Swingle.
They did an album that I had that was just fantastic, and it was all 30s, 40s, post-Depression era or just pre-Depression era music, the big band songs that were out at the time, and they were just great. I mean, the production on that was terrific, and it was just a great moving sound. I mean, they did a version of Big Bucks that I still go through in my mind every time I think about it. It's a great, great song and great version of it.
Hey, listen, while we're talking about singers and all, I have to kind of a non sequitur here. I got to bring this up because it's bothering me. I wonder if anybody here can explain to me the phenomenon of Taylor Swift. Now, we all grew up.
Marketing.
Well, yeah, beside that, we all grew up listening to all different kinds of singers. All right. Taylor Swift, she has got her, as far as I'm concerned, her head and her heart are in the right place. But as a singer, she has zero. I mean, absolutely zero musicality about her. The songs are vacuous that she sings and writes about. She has but the phenomenon just kills me. I mean, we've been through the Beatles. We've been through Elvis Presley. True, the marketing wasn't there the way it is today, and promotion and hype and everything else. I guess a lot of people didn't know how to do it. But when I hear and see people that I really respect, adults, people like David Brooks, who is a very brilliant writer for the New York Times and speaks and whatever, he is a Taylor Swift fan. Mm-hmm. And everything this person touches is gold. It's amazing. Her uncle grew up, her uncle lived across the street from me. So at some point in the 80s, she was visiting him. And I'm thinking to myself, if he still lived there and she visited him today, the value of our house would probably go up $500,000.
Invite her over.
Easily. No doubt about it. But I mean, she could hold an avocado in her hand and all of a sudden, a million avocados would be sold in no time. I don't understand the attraction like this of all people to be able to, generate such enthusiasm and such.
Well, does it speak to the lack of creativity that's available to people nowadays?
I mean, this is a person who, maybe at best she might hit 2 chords, possibly 3 on a good day.
There's something called auto-tune. You've heard of auto-tune, right?
Auto-tune.
Yeah.
You guys, what you're missing here is that my 25-year-old manager that I work with at Tommy Bahama, that young girl has been with Taylor Swift since she started. The connection she has with women, with teens that have now grown into young adults, the connection that he has, it's all about, the breakup songs. It's all about her, her story about coming from nothing. And, and then, of course, coming up with that country song, singing about Tim McGraw, which brought her up right there in the country, I think the Country Music Awards. The connection she has with the every girl, the fact that she just donated $55 million to her, gave $55 million to her crew to say thank you. She's not phony.
No.
She's just got, the one thing is that she breaks up with guys every 20 minutes.
My granddaughter's gone to every one of her concerts in the last 5 years, and she's
now
a senior. She's a senior in college, and so there. You're right about the connection, but I do think that there's a lack of quality songs out there, of quality entertainers. So I think kids, they go for the closest thing too. I mean, Bob mentioned some of the artists that we had when we were playing their hits 30, 40 years ago, and they were, in my opinion, they had more talent. They really did. Maybe they couldn't. Maybe they could sing better. Maybe they can't dance as well as Taylor.
And that's the thing right there. I was just going to say. I mean, it's not a concert. It's a show.
It's a show.
Yeah,
that's
guys,
exactly
listen.
Right.
What it is with Taylor Swift is she is so smart as a marketer. She's tapped into the culture and what the culture is hungry for. So she's got the look that young ladies look up to, and so she's a role model for them. The way she wears her lipstick, the way she comports herself, and just the fact that she's tapped into the genre of music that attracts all these young people, and the words that she sings. I just think she's really a genius when it comes to that. She may not have the greatest voice or anything, but she has the whole package.
Yeah, but the voice doesn't matter. I mean, you're talking about young girls, and I'm saying, hey, that's fine. That's the way she started. But when I see very mature adults who are in their 30s, there's something going on here that is much more than being a teenage appealing.
She's an icon.
Well, she's 30 years old now.
No question about it. You know, her folks,
she's smoking hot.
She's smoking hot.
Right,
and
about that.
Is empowering. She's empowering her audience. That just that superpower stance, every shot of her is from the bottom up. She's standing in that superhero stance, and she belts it out, and she will do anything on stage to contact and stay in contact with her audience. I've had friends ask me the same thing. What is it with Taylor Swift? What's the phenomenon? And I never listened to her music, but I know essentially what her songs are appealing to and the storylines. And just her image, her total image is so empowering to people in that earlier part of the stages that it carries through with others. When Bill Belichick says that she's a superstar and she puts on a show because she stood there in the rain and sang to her audience, soaking wet in the rain with her hair dragging down. Yeah, 3 hours. 3 hours. And she dives into water, and the show comes up with a new. I mean, the show is a phenomenal. They're just a whole epic series.
You know, and she sings about unrequited love and love lost, and those are things that
the Moonglows used to sing about.
Country music.
Yeah, there's stuff from the 50s and 60s.
You know, her folks.
Just the fact that a bunch of old radio guys are talking about Taylor Swift tells you something about her, right?
You got us.
You know, her folks took one of the greatest and biggest gambles ever. They lived up in Wyomissing here, further north, probably about an hour away. But they just packed up everything. He quit his job. They headed down to Nashville. She, as a teenager, wanting to get her to be a star. I mean, can you imagine risking like your life's career, closing up shop, moving 1,000 miles away, and betting everything on your daughter to become a superstar in this business, in the music business of all things?
And she sang about, their first song was singing about Tim McGraw, and that was enough to get her right up on that stage, and for him giving her an entree into the country world. I mean, I don't know if that was her very first, but she was smart enough to do that.
Again, that's using your brain.
Yeah.
Yep, somebody was thinking.
So somebody was really behind the marketing thing from day one. I mean, I don't begrudge her or anything, but I'm truly a person serious about music. I've followed it all my life. But you know, you were able to pick out.
She puts herself out there real to these girls. I mean,
there's no doubt about it. It's just the hold that she has on millions and millions of people. And again, what I said at the beginning, attracting an upper demo audience now almost, let alone teenage girls. We're talking people in their 30s, 40s, and even old farts like us, for God's sakes.
I think Christina Aguilera's parents did that too, Steve, by the way. She's from Pittsburgh, and I think her parents kind of got behind her and kind of moved for her to Los Angeles or someplace. I only mention that because she's from here, and Christina Aguilera.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was a Disney girl.
Yeah, she was.
I thought Christina Aguilera was from Detroit, correct?
No, she's from here.
Okay, I heard her in
the only reason why I know why is because a guy who does mornings at KDKA, a guy named Larry Richard, was one of the guys who was kind of encouraged her along when she was small. I'm talking real little. I mean, these were works in progress, by the way, when they were like 7, And you talked about being a Disney. What was a Mouseketeer or something?
Yep.
Yeah. She was.
Hey.
That was like a step.
And that
on her rise.
I saw an interview with her where they asked her, Christine, if she could hit in high E. They had some song that nobody else could sing. And she says, I think I can hit that. She didn't even know what it was. And she, sure enough, went in and belted it out and it became a hit. So, just timing, I think, and, right place, right time.
Yeah.
In the case of Taylor Swift, she was knocking on doors and dropping off tapes and saying, here I am, I want to be a star, until she figured out how to market herself. So
the difference is she hasn't. She still looks like Taylor Swift did too. I mean, she wears newer costumes, but she's been true to her appearance all the way along. Whereas some of these artists, they look a certain way when they hit it when they're younger, and they start changing their hair, they put tattoos on, and they morph into something different. You know, and she's been
she's never
consistent.
She's never sleeved herself out.
Yeah.
Well,
she never did a Britney Spears. She never sleeved herself out.
How is Taylor Swift different than Beyonce, for instance? The Beyonce was Queen Bee was before Taylor Swift became this big, and Beyonce was the big star then. She was the big glamour person.
She still is.
And I think the only difference I see is that Beyonce started out as being big glamour and big glam, and Taylor Swift started out as being big natural and and big relatable. I think but the two of them now, between the two of them, they have the biggest GDP than some major countries around the world.
Look at Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift kicked the shit out of Ticketmaster and out of Live Nation. When she basically brought that to everybody's eyes that company owns Ticketmaster. I mean, and they have control over most of the arenas in the country, so they can even turn around to somebody even like a Taylor. Say, okay, you want to play in 90% of the arenas? So she finally brought that to light and said, hey, there's a monopoly here. There's something going on. And boy, talk about getting people behind. She just brought 2 million girls to the last NFL game. Okay. Yeah. I mean, half the time was looking at her in that box as well as on the field.
And she wasn't being glamorous in the box. She was shouting, drinking beer, and just everybody jumping up and down. I mean, that's the thing. It wasn't a glam box. It was a people box. Certainly, she brought a bunch of stars with her, but those were all her friends. I mean, she's going out having lunch with the girls, just like everybody else does. It's just, it is incredible. And her movie of the concert just did $100 million in pre-sale tickets for the movie of the concert people already saw. I mean, it's unreal.
I think the only thing that could sink Taylor Swift's popularity is if she starts sounding off about politics.
Oh God, I don't think she's a smart woman. I don't think she's that stupid.
No, she's just getting people to vote, which is fine.
Yes,
that's neutral.
That's right.
Get them to vote. Don't
But taking a side would be the end of it for her. That would be the end of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
They asked her to get involved with that cryptocurrency. I can't think of the guy's name. You all probably know.
Sam Bankman-Fried.
Yeah,
they asked her to get involved with that. She asked if it was a registered security.
Yeah.
And they said no. She said, never mind, not interested. Thank you.
Okay. Brady bought it. Brady went full in.
Can I say something here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned, one of you guys mentioned about the performance, and I'm not a big Taylor Swift fan. I'm a Pancakes fan. Now, you don't know who Pancakes is. She's my daughter. And she she gave up her working career to do solely music, and she's been performing. The other day, they had a gig, it got canceled. She winds up getting another gig right away, and then gets another one on top of it. But she's not with she's with one group called Sex and Candy. That's her main group, but she also does a Alanis Morissette tribute band. She's in that. She's in a band called Snafu, and then she's in a different other things. But the one thing I watch my daughter sing, she performs. She's a performer. I mean,
Big time.
Yeah, she puts her all into it, and she was at Ballard's down at the out at Block Island, and
Great
so they
job.
do a song. She kills the song "What's Going On" by Three Non Blondes, and that's a tip job music. So she takes the thing to tip jar, and everyone they make a big bucks with just the tip jar alone. And I watch her, and I just say she's got a good voice. She's strong. There's some stuff she really can't do, but she'll make the attempt. But as a performer, she's right on. Then she has a following now. People are starting to follow her. How far it goes, yeah.
And that's if you want to see non-performance, go to a karaoke bar.
Yeah, and
but Dave, she's got, excuse me, having watched her and that incredible talent. I mean, she really is. I mean, the energy, she never stops smiling. But it's almost like, she needs somebody out there that looks at her as a dollar sign and basically says, come on, you're my product. I'm going to drive it. Just like the Wilson's dad did, Murray Wilson.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Her fiance he has his own recording studio on his property, and
that's what's driving it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I said to him, I says, how many songs does Pam do? She says she doesn't want to record. I says, what? So I've had a long talk with her, and she goes, I think she's having fun.
Yeah,
but she takes it serious. But you're right, Steve. She needs somebody to market her.
Market and monetize.
Right. Yep. And that hasn't happened yet. And whether it will or not, I don't know. I'm not involved. I put in my 2 cents and occasionally, but no, she's she's doing her own thing. But just to say that she has a following with her Alanis Morris tribute band.
Catch her on Facebook, man. Go look at Pam Cakes on Facebook. And Angela and I went out this past summer to see her, and the weather sucked. But it was going to be her last time out at Ballards, and we haven't been able to get out to Block Island. And man, oh man, no matter who's in that crowd, she gets them all going. It's great.
Yeah, and she did that from the time she was just doing karaoke. Ralph Caponera and I went. We were doing Ralph and Friends back then, and so we would go to this bar in Middletown, and that's where we were getting a lot of our talent for the show. So I had to get up because I had to get up early the next day. So I left, and Ralph stayed. Ralph calls me the next day and says, "Hey, you missed the best part of the show." I said, "What was that?" "Come next week and you'll find out." So I go next week. I stay late, and Pam closing the show. They had her close every time, and she got the crowd going. And I'm staring at her with my jaw down to the ground, going, "Who is this?" And she was always very shy. She was never. She hated the camera, and all of a sudden, bingo, she's up there performing, and she's got the crowd all psyched up and going at it.
Dave, has she ever been to Nashville?
No, she hasn't.
Maybe she ought to go.
I talked to her about that. She's hesitant. She does not have the drive like a Taylor Swift would have. Taylor Swift's, her goal is to be number one, and that's her drive. Pam's goal is to go out and have a good time. If she makes number one, good. But I don't think she has the drive. I mean, look at us in the broadcast business. we all had the drive of getting into radio or into broadcasting. And how many people do we know that all fell apart or fell to the wayside because they lacked that drive? I mean, I lacked the drive. I didn't have the great talent, but
It's
I had the
called
talent
above
behind
average ambition, right?
There you
right.
go.
That's
Right
exactly
there.
it. You're absolutely right, Bart. It's the above average ambition. I was offered a job in the East Haven Police Department and by the chief. And I said, no, I says, I kind of like where I am. I was working at DRC at the time. And I said, no, I said, I'll stay. I like radio and broadcasting. And that to me was where my love was. The second love was working with law enforcement. But no, I mean,
that's really the key word you hit on, Dave, is drive. And I always find it very interesting, the early days of some of these people that we all know in radio or music, how they got started. Carole King certainly has one of the best stories. This was a girl in high school who would take the subway from Brooklyn to New York with her songs, run around to the different studios and record companies and push her songs, and kept pushing and pushing. There was an excellent documentary that was done, over 20 years ago, and it focused on the Brill Building. And they had Carole King and Jerry Goffin, Barry Mann, Cynthia Weil, I believe.
Yep.
And
probably Neil Sedaka.
Neil Sedaka.
Yeah.
no, he may have been mentioned, but they had those four basically as the center of the piece, and they had great footage of the early days in the 50s, but the drive, the ambition, and never giving up. Streisand is another one who was like that.
right.
And she had drive that you couldn't believe. It was just, you just had to admire these people for their ambition and their belief in themselves. And it was a different time, of course, but giving them a shot and not having to go through all the corporate bullshit that you have to go through today to do it. Ed Springsteen is another one. He's, those days he was Philly was one of his early cities, and he bonded very well with a DJ here named Ed Sharkey, and Sharkey took him in, played his songs on WMMR, and even housed him when he was in town. Couldn't afford a place to stay. He was appearing at the Main Point down here, and these stories are just sensational. You don't hear too many of those today. They want it instantly. Instantly. The first record, I wanted to be a hit. I wanted to take off. I wanted to be a star. It just, those people that have taken their time and have the ambition and the drive, those are the ones you really have to. Sinatra was the same way. I mean, look at the push that he did for so many years.
George McCannon the third. When you look back to George McCannon, and even though he had Birds of All Nations as his big hit, and he kept throwing more stuff out there, but he had an amazing drive. He never stopped doing the restaurants, and he always had a following there. But even then, he went off into the jingle business, like STP. He did Bumblebee Tuna. I think Jimmy Curtis was his partner, and he would go into New York City and just play on jingles.
I had talked to George McCann a long time ago, and George was went to Nashville, and he talked to somebody in Nashville, and they said to him, he says, "Are you willing to? You got a great voice, you got a good talent. I can push you, but are you willing to spend 300 days of the year out on tour? Are you willing to do this and do that?" Yep. And George was a family man. And he just said no. He finally realized, as much as he used to try and get his songs out there, after the guy told him that, he realized, I'm not geared for, master fame. And so he accepted what he had and what he was doing, and he did the jingles. He did the nightclubs. I mean, there's a guy that would play in a place and get people dancing. All he had was his guitar and his little square wooden box that he used to bang on. And
crazy. And they were drinking, man. They loved to drink, and and the bars loved them. And he traveled with Dick Clark.
Yes,
he did.
He did Paula, filled in for Paul and Paul at one time. And I mean, he had that he had that drive, but when he realized, it's either this or my family, he took his family, chose his family over.
You guys
over
all saw the
fame.
Elvis movie, right?
Yeah.
You talk about drive. That young man had the drive.
Did he have the drive, or did Colonel Parker have the drive?
Well,
That's
Elvis
the
had
question.
to actually do it. Elvis actually had to do what Colonel Parker said.
Yeah, but Colonel Parker pushed him into that, and I don't believe Elvis. I think he was, didn't expect to go as high as he did, and I think
Come on,
Colonel
he
Parker
wanted to be a star.
Well, yeah, but I think Colonel Parker is the one that pushed him
right onto School Street.
Put him right along. That's my opinion. So
another animal, like Joe Jackson,
Yeah.
and like Murray Wilson, and I mean, these are animals. I mean, Colonel Parker, at least from the documentary, was a scumbag. He was a circus barker, but he saw the potential for him to make money from Elvis,
yes,
and that was it.
that was his drive.
If you
Berry
look
Gordy
at
did the same thing in Motown. Berry Gordy just created stars in Motown out of people that were just singing in churches or singing in black clubs that just along the Chitlin Circuit and stuff like that. And suddenly here comes Berry Gordy and says, "No, you're going to dress up and you're going to be stars."
Well, Motown. Well, Motown was a machine. I mean, they'd bring you in there. They'd have Chole Atkins teaching them how to dance and do the steps and do the routines. They had the makeup crew. I mean, they really worked it.
And
they
routines for different groups. I mean, he specialized in creating what the groups would be and how they were going to dress and how they were going to dance, and the presentation was phenomenal.
Yeah,
Clive Davis.
Another one, Clive Davis.
Yep.
Clive Davis, yeah. Clive Davis was a spotted talent from a mile away and said, "This is it. You are the star now. You're the next star that we create."
Took over from Mitch Miller.
Yeah, right.
With Motown, there was a lot of experimentation, and there was also a lot of disagreement. But Smokey became a much more dominant factor.
Yeah.
But their studio band, the Funk Brothers, there was nothing better than that.
No.
Amen to
right
that.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I couldn't join earlier.
Yeah, a lot of these guys were jazz guys in Detroit. We're talking about people who were backing. There's the root of a lot of that stuff. And somebody just mentioned about, gospel and soul as the background.
Yeah.
They have the whole package there at Motown. The whole
you listen to some of those backing tracks, and they're all out there. I mean, they are just so freaking tight, these groups.
Mm-hmm.
And they can do any. It's like the Wrecking Crew. They can do any style. Just plug the artist in. I don't know if they're all the backing tracks.
Oh, you froze up.
Yeah, what you were saying though is true. I read that they had the same musicians and the Funk Brothers, and they would bring in the Temptations, and they would sing their song, rehearse it a few times, sing their song. They would leave, and then the Four Tops would come into the the studio, the same guys playing the instruments, and they would rehearse. And I mean, it was like a factory, the way they did stuff back then. I mean, at least in Motown. I've not seen the Hit Factory, the museum in Detroit, but they say if you see anything in your journey of life, you should stop in and see that. A
friend of mine was just there, visited, and took pictures. And there was one studio they have. It's still the original studio where all those classic recordings were made. It's still set up the same way. Yeah. And people, they give tours there. So if you're ever in Detroit, stop by Hitsville.
I think the singer sang in what used to be the hallway of the house. They made like a booth out of it, and the musicians were in like the dining room, and it was amazing. It was Berry Gordy improvising.
Yeah, it's amazing
they tested different areas. They tested different areas, and then they would swap singers in and out. And then the person who wrote the song, and Barry didn't write all the stuff or anything, but they test 3 or 4 different versions, and that's how different groups came together, and then that's how people broke out as singles.
And then what they would do is they would play the music. They'd play the songs for the entire company at lunchtime, and the company would vote on, is this a hit or is this not a hit? And if the company didn't think it was a hit, they wouldn't release it.
And they'd listen to the songs on a little speaker, like it was a car speaker, to make sure it had that sound. and their backup group, I don't know how it's pronounced, the Dance. I mean, if you listen to the Diana Ross and the Supremes song, it's not Mary Wilson or Flo Ballard. It's this in-house backing group that backed them up. They backed up the Four Tops. They backed up everybody. They sang on like 50,000 songs, these three women.
And they
after
work
all the
18,
effort, after all the brilliant musicians and all of the brilliant singers and arrangements, musicians, it came out of this AM radio, out of the little transistor speakers.
Right.
It's true.
I think Phil Spector was one of the people who did the same thing. Whenever he'd record, he wanted to hear it back on a tinny small speaker so he could hear the mix and how it was going to penetrate and cut through AM radio speakers. So there's
That's what Charlie used to do that with audition tapes. I would make a cassette. I give him the reel to reel. He says, "No, give it to me on cassette," and listen to it in his car, and because he got the sound of basically what they're going to sound like when they're on the air. And we try to simulate the same audio chain in the production room, adding with the compression and the reverb, and make it sound as if it was on the air. And Charlie would listen to a lot of guys. He did that with Ted Dallacou. He did that with Mike Taylor. He did that with Jack Tupper, Jack JM and the AM, and quite a few of the guys. So
DRC AM had a phenomenal sound.
Oh yeah,
phenomenal technical.
You're right.
Sound.
Yep.
he drove the engineers crazy when it wasn't right, boy.
Good.
Right on the phone.
Good. That's what you have to do.
Yep.
There's a graphic.
I recall one time I got a phone call. I was on in the before Otis, and he called me up and he says, "Bob, I'm listening to you. Keep in mind, this is FM and it had, the compression and everything else. I'm listening to you," he says, "and I want to tell you, you sound like God on the air."
God bless
I'll never forget that.
Is that how come you wound up in Christian radio?
Yes. Got that right, exactly.
Yeah. A true disciple.
I started out in Christian radio, and yet it survived.
Dick called me Christian radio.
Well, I got to tell you, the first station I worked for was a 100-watt daytime Christian country station in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Oh, wow. And I was reading meters, running the board, producing preachers, and actually doing Bible readings over quartet music. And it was owned by the Prohibition Party, E. Harold Munn Jr. And I used to E. Harold Munn Sr. We used to joke his name is Munn Sr. And one day he met me on the first day of Passover, and I brought a bottle of wine to take home to my mother. And was not the smartest thing I ever did to bring it into the office. And we got into a conversation. He said, "You're Jewish, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, would you start a sales department for me instead?" And I thought, "Well, there you go." That's how it started. $5 a day. That's what I was paid. Sign on to sign off.
There's a graphic somewhere. I've got to find the meme. Which is really kind of hilarious. It shows a picture of, audio console, $80,000. It goes through this whole thing. The microphone, no even microphones, blah, blah, blah. It goes all the way down. And then it comes down to MP3 player, 99 cents. All this stuff gets heavily produced. It's coming out of somebody's little earphones somewhere,
Well, when we used to produce commercials on DRC for the FM, we produced them all in mono. Why? Because the mono would come out at you, still be at the right level for sending the signal out. Because everyone used to say, "Well, the commercials are louder. You guys boost them up." No, we did the stereo commercials on FM in mono, and then I read an article on that, and guy just said, he wrote the article. I said, "Damn it, I could have wrote this article." And all our commercials were mono on FM. I did produce a couple of promos, contest promos in stereo, where I actually had it going from one speaker to the other. And then when it played on the AM side, it had a phasing effect on the AM side. So same promo, Dick McDonough's voice, same promos, but it was Cash something, and it had the speakers would go from one speaker to the other, but when you heard it on the AM side, it started to it actually phased automatically the background. So I got a nice attaboy for that.
It's funny that you bring up phasing, because in the early days of PLR, we would do our own phasing with some of the songs, and people didn't know it. I mean, you had some Doobie Brothers stuff, of course. Dance.
Listen to the music.
Listen to the music, and some of the others. And we had two crowns that were about 3 feet apart, and we ran from one to the other, and we recorded them out of phase by about 30 or 40 milliseconds. And we would take a song and we would just add just a touch of phasing, and it was all mechanical, but it worked well.
What was the song, guys? Was it Pictures of Matchstick Men or something like that? That was
Status Quo. That was the group,
and it was really phased. That was like
so. Was Ichiku Park?
Ichiku Park. That's right. Ichiku Park.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I did that one time in Springfield at WHYN. I took 2 versions of Satisfaction by the Stones when it was out in 1965, put it together, made this phasing sound out of it. If you ran them in sync, carted it up, put it on the air. Zach Land came into me and said, baby, what are you doing there? What is that? I said, well, I just playing around with you. If they wanted it like that, they would do it like that. So knock it off. I was gone 2 weeks later.
You were phased out, you might say.
I was phased out.
Good one, Ted.
Good one, Ted.
Phased out.
How are we doing on time? I think time was
107:16.
Time to say goodbye to all our company.
Why don't we, Jim, why don't you take us around the room one time so people know who they've been listening to?
Okay, we've had on this conversation Dave Overson, Tracy Carmen, Dick Calt, Steve Parker, John Landry, Bob Marks. We've had Bob Craig in his lunchtime menu. John Landry, Bob Marks. Did I say Bob Marks twice?
Yes.
Oh, well,
I
think he's due 2 times. Ted Dalico. I think I mentioned Steve Parker before too.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
You're on
Jerry
this
Mathers. Jerry Mathers has the beaver.
Yes. And I'm Jim Harrington, or whatever you want to call me.
Your friend has got a lot to share.